The year 2017 is coming to an end, and what an outstanding year for gamers it has been. Taking a look back, this year has proven to be every gamer's wet dream. There was something for everyone. Given the sheer quantity of outstanding titles, from massive AAA productions like Horizon Zero Dawn to tiny indie games like Little Nightmares, and a good mixture of well-established brands as well as brand new IPs, it's fair to say that 2017 was the strongest and most diverse year of the current console generation. Especially the beginning of the year was so crowded with phenomenal, long-anticipated games that it was impossible to keep up. For that reason, I want to give a quick shout out to all the amazing titles I can't wait to get my hands on, but simply haven't had the time to play yet. Nintendo fans not only got their money's worth in form of a brand new console, the world also sings the praises of the return of Nintendo's most beloved franchises. Zelda Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey were met with great financial and critical success, and I'm looking forward to experiencing the adventures of Link and Mario myself. As a die-hard Dark Souls adherent, I feel obligated to slice my way through Team Ninja's unforgiving dark fantasy version of feudal Japan. I still haven't delved into Platinum Games' acclaimed android drama Nier Automata, Cuphead's terrifying video game version of 1913's Cartoons, the Japanese role-playing madness of Persona 5. I'm probably the last person on planet Earth who hasn't played PUBG. I'm also eager to pick up Rime, South Park: The Fractured But Whole, Evil Within 2, Wolfenstein 2, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, the list goes on and on. All these excellent games aren't included in my list. The fact that there are still 7 awesome games left that made it into my personal Game of the Year list should tell you everything you need to know about the superb quality of 2017. And last but not least, if you can't handle the opinions of other people and simply can't cope with the fact that your personal pick isn't included in my list, here's your trigger warning. Needless to say, this is a completely subjective list. I don't care about Metacritic scores, financial success or popular trends. Each and every game that I'm about to mention offered something special for my personal taste. I tried to establish a specific order and group the games from worst to best. However, this year I couldn't sort out a clear number one, so don't pay too much attention to my ranking. All the years before I had obvious favorites. In 2014 it was Shadow of Mordor, in 2015 Bloodborne and Witcher 3 shared the first place and have since become 2 of my favorite games of all time, and in 2016 Dark Souls 3 and Uncharted 4 concluded 2 of my most beloved franchises on a high note. While 2017 certainly contained a greater amount of high-quality games than all the years before, in my humble opinion 2015 and 16 were even more satisfying, for the simple reason that none of the games in my 2017 list managed to wow me in quite the same way as Bloodborne, Witcher 3 or Uncharted 4 did. Without further ado, here are my favorite games of 2017. I'm afraid I have to start with a bummer. Yes, I really enjoyed my time with the sequel to my favorite game of 2014, and yes, I like it enough to include it in my list. But as contradictory as it sounds, Shadow of War also was my biggest disappointment of the year. Despite what many of you might think, my discontent has nothing to do with the heatedly discussed loot box debacle. Although it didn't help, that's for sure, since I chose to ignore the online components of the game and focused on the meat and potatoes, namely the single player campaign and the exploration of the 5 maps, the entire microtransaction nonsense didn't really spoil my experience. What makes Shadow of War a little bit underwhelming, regardless of the 50 hours of enjoyable playtime I put into the game, is the fact that in its core, Shadow of War makes the same mistakes so many video game sequels make. By and large, Shadow of War is exactly like its predecessor, just with twice the amount of content and without the surprising element Shadow of Mordor brought to the table in 2014. Shadow of Mordor came out of nowhere, and the Nemesis system was a fresh new idea of which you don't see a whole lot these days. I actually preferred the overseeable world size of Shadow of Mordor. For once, an open world game didn't feature a completely overwhelming map size. It was a neat little package, surprising and not a minute too long. Shadow of War, on the other hand, suffers from the same overload of annoying, oftentimes utterly pointless collectathons. Monolith definitely did their best to expand upon the game's core feature by introducing randomly generated fortresses, followers and other additions to the Nemesis system, but overall I left Shadow of War oversaturated, whereas Shadow of Mordor left me longing for more. In fact, towards the end game, Shadow of War gets so repetitive that I decided to abandon the game a few feet before the finish line. I'm around 2 hours away from the campaign ending, but I have no desire to finish it. It's definitely my least favorite of the 7 games I picked. At the same time, I would be lying if I told you I didn't enjoy playing it. If you couldn't already tell by my love for Bloodborne and Dark Souls, I'm drawn towards grotesque, ghoulish and dark worlds, and Little Nightmares doesn't disappoint in this regard. Just like Limbo and Inside, Little Nightmares' story is completely up to your interpretation. Instead of putting emphasis on a story-driven experience, Little Nightmares wants you to soak in the dense and unnerving atmosphere more than anything else. The reason I like this game so much has to do with its ability to make you feel incredibly weak and vulnerable. You are traversing a dangerous place full of mystery where only one thing is for certain: everyone is hostile. Playing Little Nightmares makes you feel like a scared little kid, hiding under your blanket at night and praying to God that the monsters don't get you. Gameplay-wise, it's nothing more but a simple platformer with puzzle-solving elements. What really sucks you in is the brimming atmosphere. As much as I like Little Nightmares, there's one indie game that blew everyone else out of the water, which leads us to the next candidate in my list.
I'm sure my mom was just trying to protect me. Now that there's only one of us left, I thought it was time I heard the stories.
One would do a terrible disservice to What Remains of Edith Finch by calling it a walking simulator. Essentially, that's what it is. You control the camera, explore the secret passages and hidden mysteries of the Finch estate that appears like a house from some twisted fairy tale, and interact with objects. That's all there is to it gameplay-wise. Yet, the true brilliance of What Remains of Edith Finch lies in its outstanding ability to combine this limited control scheme with unique scenarios. Each member of the Finch family fell victim to a tragic death. They may have passed, but their stories are still to be discovered. It is truly remarkable how the game transforms into a completely new version of itself every 15 minutes. The gameplay is extremely simplistic. In spite of that, no activity feels exactly the same. What Remains of Edith Finch plays with the boundaries of the video game medium in new and interesting ways. To break it down, Giant Sparrow created a feast for metafiction fans. It's a game that's bursting with creativity. Most games that contain over 100 hours of playtime are struggling to reach the level of artistic energy that is present in What Remains of Edith Finch's 2.5 hours of superb storytelling. At the same time, the game doesn't lose itself in experiments, but always keeps the focus on its beautifully told story that will leave you baffled, heartbroken and uplifted all at once. It's hard to say anything more without spoiling the most surprising part, so I'll leave it at that. From all the games that operate in the genre, Gone Home, Everybody Has Gone to the Rapture and Firewatch, to name just a few, What Remains of Edith Finch is the crown jewel.
But if you know anything about the Finch family, you know the stories have at least one thing in common. Someone always dies at the end.
Uncharted: The Lost Legacy is the final entry in the franchise for the time being. I still can't believe that Naughty Dog managed to deliver a game of that caliber in just a little longer than 1 year from Uncharted 4's release. Other developers wouldn't reach the quality standard of Lost Legacy in a full AAA development cycle of 4 years. It goes to show that Naughty Dog houses an abundance of talent and a perfectly attuned team. It's not at all surprising that Lost Legacy turned out to be the best blockbuster experience of the year. Naughty Dog has fine-tuned the story-driven single-player experience to a level of excellence that is way out of reach for the vast majority of the industry. What started as an intended Uncharted 4 single-player DLC was soon marketed as a full-fledged Uncharted game. Rightfully so, if you ask me. In many ways, The Lost Legacy pulls right at the heartstrings of long-time Uncharted fans. The lush and colorful jungle setting of India reminds a lot of what many consider to be the best Uncharted game. Lost Legacy undoubtedly features many of the best puzzles and locations in the entire series, and sends you out with a bang in the form of one of the most epic set pieces I've ever seen, remarkable even for Uncharted standards. It also feels completely unnecessary to mention that the graphical fidelity and first and foremost the jaw-dropping character animations are as gorgeous as one would expect from a Naughty Dog game. As I mentioned in my review, despite the overall splendor of Lost Legacy, one crucial element was missing. It was great to spend some time with Chloe again, and Lost Legacy is a worthy send-off for the franchise, but something just felt off. Uncharted 4 was above all else the most emotional title in the series, which only seems logical since it ended the journey of Nathan, Sully and Elena, the heart and soul of Uncharted. It took me a couple of months to come to terms with the fact that my favorite franchise has come to an end. But thanks to the heartfelt conclusion of Uncharted 4, I was able to find some closure. This is why playing Lost Legacy also felt odd. I was constantly waiting for the emotional gut punch, but it never came. As exciting as Nadine's and Chloe's adventure is, I realized something very important. I want Naughty Dog to explore new genres and characters, because the last time they did that, I got The Last of Us. As much as I adore Uncharted, I adore Naughty Dog as a developer even more. It's time to let the series rest, leave Uncharted on a high note. I'm eager to see something entirely new from them in the near future. Horizon Zero Dawn probably was the most important game for the PlayStation community and definitely delivered on its promise to add a fantastic new franchise to the PS4 library. I was insanely hyped for Horizon, and I'm glad to say that it didn't disappoint. Guerrilla Games created their best game yet and showed the entire video game world what they are truly capable of. Horizon's one-of-a-kind world design that intermingles futuristic robots with tribal societies in a post-apocalyptic version of Earth reclaimed by nature, as well as the drop-dead gorgeous graphics, are pure eye candy. I invested well over 70 hours in the game, and until the very end I never got tired to just take a moment and soak it all in. It's also welcome that Horizon has a really engaging story that knows to impress with quite a few unexpected twists during the last third of the game. Even though Horizon resorts to the Ubisoft open world formula in its general game design, it never did so to the same exhausting extent as Assassin's Creed or Far Cry. You have your bandit camps, watchtowers and collectibles, but they all come in manageable numbers. What really did it for me was the addicting combat system. I had a blast hunting down new and even stronger machine types, learning their weaknesses and mastering my weapon arsenal. While it can get tiresome to fight the 100th bandit in Far Cry, holding your ground against fierce machines in Horizon looked and felt badass all the way through.
Be careful. They'll be looking for you.
I'm a massive horror fan. Unfortunately, the last few years weren't too kind to horror video game fans. Long gone are the days of Silent Hill and Resident Evil, groundbreaking milestones for the gaming industry. Since then, a truly great horror game gets released every once in a blue moon. I'm not particularly fond of glorified demo reels like Five Nights at Freddy's and Slender. Since Dead Space, the last horror game that really impressed me, I was desperately anticipating the arrival of a similar survival horror experience. A game that could fill the void in my shrinking, withering horror game heart. And in January 2017, it finally came. Of all games, it was Resident Evil 7 that gave me the horror experience I was craving for. A franchise whose latest two entries were anything but stellar. Resident Evil 7 revitalized the entire series by finding the perfect mixture of old and new. The gameplay mechanics seem oddly familiar to the oldest games in the franchise, yet the redneck horror in the swamps of Louisiana and first-person perspective is completely new territory. The game constantly kept me on my toes by introducing new settings, insanely epic and terrifying boss battles, and at times truly disturbing scenes of violence. I felt 10 times more vulnerable walking around with a shotgun and flamethrower in Resident Evil 7 than I did in Outlast with nothing but a camera, which really speaks for its excellent game design.
En par ved drömmar folk om ungefär Bivros med inga änder I Blåhundsens vargandar.
As I pointed out in the beginning of my video, this year I couldn't select a clear winner. For the sake of form, I decided to appoint a number one anyway. Why Hellblade? Because Hellblade achieved what only a handful of games or any kind of art achieve in a person's lifetime. Senua's nightmarish journey through the darkest corners of Norse mythology opened my eyes for people I knew nothing too little about. If a game like Hellblade can present a complex topic like mental illness in such a tangible and emotional way, it seems like we've just scratched the surface of the narrative potential in video games. Ninja Theory created something truly special with Hellblade, not only due to its unconventional subject matter. Above all, Hellblade is the ultimate counterexample to all those shady business practices and half-finished games that tainted the gaming year of 2017. Even though 2017 should be remembered as a year of exceptional quality for the video game world, we also had to endure the rise of loot boxes, microtransactions, and EA being an even bigger party pooper than usual. Hellblade is the counterdraft to the clusterfuck of unethical business ideas that is Star Wars Battlefront 2. Hellblade's developers are honest to their fans, granting us insight into the entire production process. Hellblade tells a story-driven single-player experience of AAA quality for half the price. Hellblade tackles difficult, important topics and tries to bring the medium forward. Hellblade knows exactly what it is and stays true to its original vision. Hellblade is everything that Star Wars Battlefront isn't. Ninja Theory wandered into Uncharted territory, and God am I grateful that it paid off for them. Recently they declared that Hellblade sold way better than they expected and actually made a profit. I'm convinced Ninja Theory created their most important game yet, and in all likelihood the most important game of the year. Senua's journey is one I will never forget. It's a game that you play once but remember forever. I was part of her grief, sadness, fear, pain, anger and hope. Rarely have I suffered and emphasized with a video game character more than with Senua. This game touched me on a profound and deep level. It allowed me to enter the mind of a person who suffers from severe psychotic mental illness, and widened my understanding for people who live in a world so different from my own, yet to them it's just as real. Hellblade is a game everyone should have experienced. 2017 truly was a remarkable year for games. But you know what? I have a feeling 2018 will be even better.